Oh, hello everyone. It's Ben Hardy here, and in today's we're going to be talking about car dealerships that do not charge over MSRP. Now, I want this video to be focused on dealerships that have product that's in high demand that is still going for over MSRP in the general market, and they're choosing to not sell that product for over MSRP. So just because I don't mention a dealership in this video doesn't mean that that dealer charges over MSRP. I want to put that disclaimer out there. But before we get in the video, as always, if you want to save time and money the next time you purchase a car, link to my car buying guide in the description down below. And then if you want to see more videos just like this, then I recommend you subscribe because I post content every single day. Let's get into it. Now, after doing that intro, I realized that I need to go over two more quick disclaimers. So the first disclaimer is that one dealership in this group cannot sell to customers outside their sales region. It's not their choice. It's their manufacturer. It's the Land Rover dealership. I've talked about this when I review cars at their dealership. You know, in the videos I say, hey, you can get MSRP with these vehicles, but you have to be within their sales region. So that's the first disclaimer for that particular store, and we'll kind of talk about that store a little bit more during the video. And then the other disclaimer is some of these stores will sell customers local here in Utah MSRP for cars, or sometimes even under MSRP. But if you're not local, they won't do that for you. And if you're wondering why, well, it's because you're not going to service your vehicle with them because you're not local to Utah. And when you sell your vehicle, you're not going to sell it back to them because, again, you're not local to Utah. And so they basically, would just completely lose out on the situation because they could charge a market premium on it and they're choosing not to. And so they want to, if they're going to give a good deal, they want to keep things local. And then the other thing I want to mention is why Utah has so many dealers that don't charge over MSRP when they could. And it's actually for a number of reasons. So first off, if you look at Utah as a state, it's actually a pretty large state in terms of overall area, but the population's relatively small. It's like under 4 million at this point. But the population density within Utah is pretty interesting because pretty much most of the state is empty. And then you have a few valleys that are basically running north to south that have all of the population. Like Salt Lake County, for example, which contains Salt Lake City, which is the capital, has like over 1 million people that inhabit it. And so most of the state's population is concentrated in a very small area. And so this creates a very interesting dynamic where Utah is considered a small market by automakers. So Utah doesn't necessarily get the most in terms of allocation with most automakers. But because the population is concentrated in such a small area, that means that there's a lot of competition between dealers. And so you have the situation where there isn't necessarily the biggest supply with cars with certain vehicles, but there's so much competition that it kind of keeps prices down. So I feel like it's kind of a win-win for a small market. You don't necessarily always see that within a small market, but it's looking like manufacturers are starting to realize just how big Utah's market is with purchasing vehicles. And so the allocation across the board with most manufacturers is actually increasing quite a bit. And so I'm excited for that, obviously, as someone who reviews cars. But anyways, with all of that out of the way, let's dive into the dealers that don't charge over MSRP. So first off is going to be a specific set of dealerships here in Utah, and that is the Dodge Ram Chrysler dealerships. At this point, most of them have basically put their pricing at MSRP or even under MSRP on certain vehicles. And so if you happen to live in a state where your Dodge Ram Jeep Chrysler dealers think that they can charge over MSRP for vehicles, just call one of the Utah dealers and see where their pricing's at, and I think that you might be surprised. Now, the way that I'm going to go about going through the rest of the dealers is I'm basically just going to tell you guys my filming route from south to north, and that'll kind of help me keep things in line mentally and hopefully not forget any dealers. And if I happen to forget any dealers and you're watching this video that you work at one of those dealers, I'm sorry, don't take it personally. But anyways, the first dealership is going to be the BMW in Pleasant Grove, Utah. So if you guys are wondering, my contact there is Brendan. Now, this is a pretty interesting situation because BMW is really constrained from a supply perspective, and they also have really cool product with the M cars. And so this dealership could charge some pretty massive price premiums on their vehicles. I remember there was one car specifically that I reviewed with them that they could have charged something like $50,000 over MSRP, and that's just not how they run with things. And so MSRP for everything. So if you happen to live in a place where you have BMW dealers that are price gouging you, check out the BMW in Pleasant Grove. Just ask for Brendan there. So the next store is going to be the Land Rover in Lehigh, Utah. And this is actually a pretty new store. And this is another interesting situation where with their product, they could charge huge price premiums. Like for example, with the new full-sized Land Rover, if you have like an SV package, for example, that vehicle in like California is going for like $50,000 to $100,000 over MSRP. And so they could charge some pretty big price premiums. And the area that they're located in, Lehigh, Utah, is right next to Silicon Slopes, where you have a bunch of tech money, where these people would be more than happy to pay crazy price premiums for vehicles. I mean, they frankly do with a lot of other dealerships in that area. And so the fact that they don't charge over MSRP is pretty surprising. If you want my contact there, it's Jordan. So just ask for Jordan if you happen to be, again, within their sales region. That's the only, I guess, quote unquote downside, is that Land Rover has locked things, which I really hope that Land Rover doesn't do that anymore. And I hope that other manufacturers stop doing that, because when manufacturers do this like regional locking situation, it makes it so that dealers basically have all the pricing power in the world because customers can't buy outside of their region. Again, that's why people that want to buy Land Rovers in California just get absolutely hosed most of the time, because those California dealers, again, charging $50,000 to $100,000 over MSRP for certain vehicles within the Land Rover product lineup. Now, the next one is the Larry H. Miller Chevy in Murray, Utah. So this is another brand where they could actually charge some pretty big price premiums on vehicles like the new C8 Corvette, the new C8 Z06 as well, and then even the Silverado ZR2, and there are some other vehicles, but those are the main ones that I've seen pretty big markups on in other places, and especially the C8 Z06. I mean, there are dealers that are literally charging $50,000 to $100,000 over MSRP, and the Chevy in Murray isn't charging over MSRP. Now, the one thing that I do want to mention is everyone kind of knows about this because I've posted videos talking about how this dealer doesn't charge over MSRP for any of their vehicles. And so their wait list for vehicles like the C8 Z06 is pretty long. Most Chevy dealers, even if they charge over MSRP, have pretty long wait lists. And so that's the one thing is, you know, getting an allocation might be a little bit difficult. But what I will say is it looks like regular C8 availability has improved quite a bit. Like you guys probably saw on the main channel, I recently posted a regular C8 Stingray convertible that they had for sale at MSRP. And so, you know, if I ever see deals like that, I'll post them on the main channel, or maybe I'll remember to try to post them on this channel as well. But if you're looking for like a regular C8 Corvette, then I would talk to them because it seems like the lead times on those are pretty short at this point. If you're wanting my contact, there is Nick and Gage. Now, I know that this video is titled Dealers That Don't Charge Over MSRP, and this next dealer does technically have markups on certain vehicles, but the markup is so low compared to what I see with other dealers nationally that I figured that it was still worth mentioning, and it is the Larry H. Miller Toyota in Murray. So with most of their vehicles, they don't charge over MSRP. Now, if it has a TRD Pro badge on it, or if it's something like the new GR Corolla, they do have a slight markup on the vehicles, but it's only $2,000. That's all they ever do. And for those of you that are looking at something like a Tundra TRD Pro or a GR Corolla, then what you'll know is that is extremely low compared to what you see nationally. Like with the TRD Pros, for example, most dealers I see are charging $15,000 to $25,000 over MSRP. And then with the GR Corolla, most dealers are charging $10,000 to $20,000, even $30,000 over MSRP. So in comparison, the $2,000 markup, it is a markup, right? I'm not going to, play around with that. It is a markup, is substantially smaller than what you're going to see at other places. My contact there is Mitch, if you guys are wondering. Now, the next little group is going to be the Subaru dealers here in Utah. What I've seen is that none of them charge over MSRP. Now, Subaru as a manufacturer really pushes Subaru dealers to not charge over MSRP, but some of them nationally still decide to do that. And something that's really beneficial to those of you that are Subaru fans to purchase in Utah is that Utah has the biggest Subaru dealers in the nation. Utah is just a huge Subaru place. And so the allocation here is actually really solid. And so if you're struggling to get allocation for a Subaru and you want a great deal on it, then check out the Utah Subaru dealers because it's pretty crazy. And that's something that really surprised me because, again, at the beginning of the video, I talked about how Utah is such a small market, but I guess we happen to have the biggest market for Subarus in the country. Now, the next one is going to be Acura. So Jody Wilkinson Acura in Salt Lake City, Utah does not charge any sort of markups over MSRP, even on the new NSX Type S. You guys saw that I actually reviewed that car and one of my friends bought it and he did not pay any sort of markup on that vehicle. And there were many Acura dealers across the country that were charging huge price premiums, like $50,000 to $100,000 over MSRP, and they didn't. And a lot of Acura dealers were actually shocked that they didn't charge some sort of price premium on that vehicle. And this also, again, extends to the other products. So like Type S model cars, a lot of those are selling for $2,000 to $5,000 over MSRP within most markets here in the US. And so that's another, brand that is pretty much always going for over MSRP, at least in today's market, that if you don't want to pay those markups, Jody Wilkinson in Salt Lake. And if you guys are wondering, my contact there is going to be Rachel. So the next is actually going to be a group of dealerships. It's the Jerry Seiner group here in Utah. They have quite a few brands under their nameplate. The brands that I have filmed for personally that you might not have seen reviews of yet is the Kia stores. I had just filmed a video with the Cadillac store, and then I also filmed a video with the Chevy store today. And the Kia stores, for example, they could have charged big price premiums on the Tellurides over the course of the pandemic. They didn't. And then at the Chevy store today, I was filming the new Corvette Z06, and that was a car that they sold at MSRP with no markup when, again, like I said earlier in the video, like Z06s are going for $50,000 to $100,000 over MSRP, so they could charge a huge price premium, and they're choosing not to. So just look up their dealer group. Again, they've got a bunch of different brands under their umbrella, and if you happen to be shopping one of the brands, then check them out. And then the last store is the Ed Kenley Ford in Layton, Utah. So this is a Ford dealership that also sells specialty Ford product, and they could get some pretty big price premiums for their product. Like the new Shelby Baja Raptor, for example, is a truck that at one point was selling for like $40,000, $50,000 over MSRP because they're just so rare, and they only sell them at MSRP because that's just what they do. And the regular Ford product too, they also just sell at MSRP. So GT500, obviously those have been discontinued at this point, but that was something that would be MSRP. The regular Ford Raptor, Ford Bronco Raptor as well, any of that stuff, MSRP with no markup. So if you're looking for like a specialty Ford product, like, a Shelby F-150 off-road or a Super Snake or any of those cool vehicles, then yeah, reach out to them and don't pay over MSRP for that stuff. I know a lot of dealers will charge crazy price premiums, but there you go. That's going to sum things up for our video talking about dealers that don't charge over MSRP when they could because of current market conditions. I know that the market has softened quite a bit, but there are still vehicles that people are willing to pay crazy price premiums for, and these dealers are choosing not to do that. And I do want to finish this video off with one last thing. So I understand that this is like a huge topic on the internet with dealers charging over MSRP for vehicles, and a lot of people are like, this is like the worst thing ever, and manufacturers are bagging on it, and like everyone hates it. But my personal take on the whole situation is that dealers can ask whatever they want for a vehicle. It's up to consumers and the market to choose if they are willing to pay that for a vehicle. And so as long as people continue to pay price premiums on vehicles, we're going to have price premiums on vehicles. It's up to consumers ultimately to say no to those prices. But we all know that there are enough people out there that have enough money that they're always going to be willing to pay those price premiums. And so that's just kind of the world that we live in. And so, ultimately, in a perfect world, right, no dealers would charge over MSRP, but dealers are ultimately businesses that are for profit, right? They're not non-profit businesses, they're for-profit businesses. So they're going to do what they can to keep their business afloat and to make profits and to make payroll and all that kind of stuff. And so honestly, I don't blame them. If a dealer's in a market where they can get those price premiums, like where their consumers are willing to pay them, like their consumers are willing, like they ultimately are not being it's not like the dealer is like putting a gun to their head and be like, you gotta buy this car right now. It's like they're choosing to buy that car at that price. So yeah, that's just my take on the over MSRP situation. And so hopefully this video helps you out if you happen to be looking at any of those different brands, and well, I'll see you.